Listen to me. If there was a wise man who would ever think of this, they would say in order to be superior to the man, you've got to be the man. For I am the man himself.
Give me the real deal, limousine ride, son of a gun. I do not have a Rolex, I probably never will, so I can't show that stunning thing off. But we're here for another review of WWE 24. Woo! What is going on, guys? This is the Club of the Man 1993, and this is the 27th review in this 24 review series, as we are now on one that I have actually watched for the first time today. I have never seen Ric Flair Final Farewell, as this was kind of a different one, because this is not one that reflected on the present day. It's one that more so was like a throwback one, because it didn't lead up to something that happened at the present time when this video was released. No, it came to, it actually was a throwback to the weekend of WrestleMania 24. Funny enough, WrestleMania 24 review series, talking about the final 3 days of Ric Flair's in-ring career in WWE. Now, of course, because I wasn't watching wrestling back in 2008, when he said 3 days, I thought he meant like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It actually ended up being Saturday, Sunday, Monday they were talking about. Because I had never seen that closing segment to the Raw after Mania, if that was the case. Which I watched it and thought it was definitely unreal, amazing. More so how of a Ric Flair thanking us to more so everybody coming out and saying, no, Rick, thank you. But we're going to talk about this. Now, as I always mention when I talk about someone, from before my time, Ric Flair, I truly do believe, is one of the best of all time to do it in the ring. Of course, when he just touched on it at the beginning about how the Nature Boy came along, he was typically, he was pretty much a character gimmick. Not saying that he wasn't anything fancy inside the ring. He wasn't like a fancy, like, high flyer or whatnot. He was just, he got off on his charisma. That's what made him successful. His passion for the business. And more so on that side rather than the in-ring side. And that's okay. Some people have to resort to that side to stand out than just what they could do in the ring. But as I always say respectfully, I feel like as a late bloomer fan, I can't respect, not that I don't respect the past legends. I do. I respect The Rock. I respect Stone Cold Steve Austin. I respect Hulk Hogan. Well, okay, Hogan has his, controversial takes, but what he did in the ring, I can respect that. I know what they did for the business inside the ring. I can respect that. And Ric Flair is one of them too. It's just, again, I feel like that I could talk more about modern day wrestlers than the legends from the past, because I didn't experience them live. But, again, I still believe Ric Flair is definitely one of the best of all time. Of course, he is one of the guys that has had a hard time of letting go. That's why he was even still emotional talking about this weekend in this documentary. And knowing that it technically wasn't his last match, because he still, when he went to TNA for a bit, then he, just a couple years ago, had that one special show called Ric Flair's Final Match, which I didn't see it, but I heard it was awful. I think he tagged with Andrade, but I can't remember who they faced. But yeah, that's why when he even got emotional, I'm like, Nate, you know this wasn't your legitimate final match. But again, as I always say, you can't put yourself in someone else's shoes. But we're going to talk about it. So they did do like a little bit from the Nature Boy's past. Again, I said they basically established who the character was. And also the main theme of was, Ric Flair has admitted, yes, I have done bad things, but I must have done good too, because there are people out there who idolize me, who, are inspired by me. They're showing like, all different other sports wooing and, doing his little strut he would do in the ring and all that such. Like, he obviously like made that much of a difference to have people doing stuff like that. And it's not to make fun of him. It's a way how people get energetic, get hyped up. It's just what stands out about legends like Ric Flair. But that's like kind of like the main theme here. And everybody, of course, did realize it. His passion for the business. And, the story also digs into, of course, how he was the man. But then when he was no longer the man, it definitely took a toll on him. So, again, talked about his early days a little bit. And then it kind of jumped straight to Starrcade in 1993. When I believe he won his 11th world title. And Charlotte Flair, of course, was being interviewed as well for this. And I guess apparently that title win was special to him because that's the first time his family ever saw him wrestle live. And, he admitted as well that he was not home a lot while his kids were growing up. He said that definitely Reed and Ashley, who is Charlotte, were definitely the two he probably still had the closest bonds with, while they were kids. Charlotte mentioned, when he was able to be home, he was still a dedicated dad. He was getting her ready for school in the morning and whatnot. So it's like he made an effort to have a bond with his kids, with whichever wife it is. Yes, he's had how many different women in his life. Also establishing how, he did, go from being just Richard Flair to kind of, as some people have before, embracing the Ric Flair persona, the character, and kind of becoming that guy in real life as well, too, at some points. Again, as Charlotte also mentioned, too, Ric Flair, Richard Flair, the man himself, has made a lot of mistakes, but he's owned up to them. Which is something, of course, respect with someone who makes mistakes. They own up to them. Up to them. I can't tongue twister there. Sorry. But yeah, he definitely still had a good bond with his kids. Reed, especially, also was probably the one that probably idolized him the most, and he definitely wanted to be just like his dad. But we all know, and they didn't talk about this in the documentary, but unfortunately, Reed Flair had died. I think WrestleMania 29 weekend, I think it was. So Charlotte has always mentioned at times, like, her, kind of living out her dad's legacy is also her fulfilling her brother's dream as well, as she's mentioned before in previous interviews and documentaries as well. But of course, again, the Ric Flair character, although, is popular and over, was not meant to be a hero. He was known as the dirtiest player in the game for a reason, but again, he was so entertaining and had so much passion for the industry that you couldn't help but still respect him. But he was meant to be a heel. That's why his daughter today is a heel. So yeah, there was Starrcade, and I think it was around like mid to late 90s in WCW, where even Eric Bischoff said they were trying to veer away from Ric Flair. Not saying that they weren't going to use him, but they didn't want him positioned as the top guy anymore. And this I didn't know about, but Flair took that pretty hard. Like, you knew that it bothered him with how much passion he had for the business, how dedicated he was, that, you know, they wanted to move on from him and put someone else in the spot. And whenever WCW went under and Vince bought the company, I think he took a year or two off, I think it was. And then Vince had called him, told him at the time, though, you know, we like you to come back to work, but you're not going to wrestle. And that, of course, was not true, as we learned. I believe his first match in WWE was the night. Well, since he returned, that is, of course, we all know he won the 92 Rumble. It was that he won the one he won from the number 3 spot where the title, I believe, was on the line. Or was it the first one that? Again, I've watched all the Rumble matches, but either the title was on the line or it was the first Rumble that a WrestleMania spot was on the line. I can't remember which one it was. But he did return, I believe, in the 2002 Royal Rumble. And again, this I didn't know. Like I said, the biggest thing I didn't know about Ric Flair was the fact that he took it hard when he was no longer being viewed as the guy. But it took Triple H taking him under his wing. And because he even said, too, he had a match with Vince McMahon when he first came back. He said he was fine with it, but it's not a match that he's like entirely proud of. And then Triple H took him under his wing and kind of like helped him get the spark back to realize even if he's not the guy, he can still be him and entertain the audience. That Ric Flair they still love. Even if he's not the top guy, he's still loved and people are entertained by him. So he came back and he would wrestle. He, of course, was a big part of Evolution with Triple H, Randy Orton, and Batista, of course. And they eventually, of course, get to... Now, I know it bounced around based on the backstory. First, we're getting to, you know, what they kind of spread out throughout there. And that was, again, the entire weekend in Orlando for his last match. But basically, he was, like, approaching 60 years old. And he didn't want to give it up. But basically, Vince had to call him and say, this is it. So that's when they had that final storyline where any match he would wrestle, the moment he lost, his career was over. And, of course, he gets to WrestleMania, and he wanted to fight Shawn Michaels. He wanted, you know, him, the best from his generation, and one of the best from the new generation, to go at it and just tell that emotional story. Where Shawn Michaels, despite the fact that, you know, he loves Ric Flair, he's not going to, you know, ignore him when he said, I'm going to bring out the best of you. And I don't want you to, you know, cower back and not pull the trigger. So we had that, of course, being built in there as well. And then, of course, they have him get inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2008 as well. Triple H was the person who inducted him, which I think is fair game, especially, again, since he's kind of the one that we've learned, I myself learned here, that revived his career. Because if it wasn't for Triple H, I don't think Ric Flair would have wrestled as long as he did. He had lost the passion when he was no longer the guy. But once, you know, Triple H got his gears going again, then he was able to finish his career, except that he was no longer the guy, but he was still Ric Flair. And he gave a great speech, talked about his children, how they're some of the heroes in his life, and whatnot and everything. And then, of course, we do have the match between him and Shawn Michaels. Legendary match. Again, I've seen it a handful of times. Again, it wasn't a WrestleMania I watched live, but it's still a moment that I felt when I watched it. Actually, to be honest, my good friend Daniel Gaiza, who doesn't do YouTube anymore but used to, that was actually, he had some friends watching that match during school one time, and that's actually, I believe, the match that made him a wrestling fan. Like, mine, I always say, is John Cena and Daniel Bryan from SummerSlam in 2013. His is Ric Flair and Shawn Michaels WrestleMania 24. And, they had that story. And even, of course, they were bringing the best out of each other. And Shawn was all for it. But then realized he was about to take this all away from, someone he truly loved. He couldn't pull the trigger. Because remember, he had stopped. And then, of course, Ric Flair was about to beat him, but it wasn't quite enough. And then Shawn gets back up. And again, when he went for the sweet chin music and then hesitated before, this time he's getting set up again. And he's getting up there, and Rick is just going, like, bring it to me. Bring it to me. Bring it to me. And you see the famous moment of zoomed in on Shawn Michaels' face, and he goes, I'm sorry. I love you. Sweet chin music. And that was it. And of course, as soon as the pin happened, Shawn just rolled over and immediately gave him a hug and got emotional. Shawn Michaels, again, has been involved in some very emotional moments, storyline wise, of course, for sure. That I always think back to, when Triple H at times seemed to, put him in the situations where it's like, you got to pick me or else, basically, or what, like, such as the end of an era match at WrestleMania 28. Still one of my personal favorite matches, and one of my personal favorite kickouts with that sweet chin music into the pedigree. How Taker kick out of that, I still will never understand. But yeah. Now the thing though was, Flair thought it was all over after that night. Then they called him and told him to come to Raw. He came to Raw. He comes over to Vince, and he's thanking Vince for everything, and he's like, no. He goes, you're not here to thank me. Just go out there and be Ric Flair. So Ric Flair goes out, basically does a little farewell address. But when he was done, Triple H came out and turned this into, again, as I said earlier, Ric Flair saying thank you to all of us. And he goes, this time it's our turn to say thank you to you. Of course, yeah, Triple H was the one, again, I keep saying, who kind of got Ric Flair to, get the passion back. And, he was first, and then the Four Horsemen, Evolution, all these other members of the roster came out to say thank you. Even Shawn Michaels, and I believe Vince was the last one to come out himself, and the rest of them just stood on the ramp. And of course, congratulate him. I think Undertaker did get in the ring and did a typical pose and whatnot, and too. But I thought it was really cool that they did that. Because I never knew that segment happened on Raw until I watched this episode of 24. But like I said, the only down part is seeing obviously how much that weekend meant to Rick, and I don't want to take it away from him. And of course, the emotions that he had with the current interview at the time from that weekend. Is still the fact that, again, that wasn't his final match. Again, at the time of this interview, which was like 2020, I believe it was before he had that final match where he tagged with Andrade, wherever the heck they were at. I remember also when he appeared in AEW briefly, when Sting had the story of his retirement match, I was afraid they were going to do Sting versus Ric Flair. I really thought they were going to do that, but nope, thank goodness they didn't do that. Because, again, Ric Flair, again, I love you, Nate. You're done. Especially, oh, God, the stuff I heard about his last match he's had, it was not good. But he did wrestle in TNA for a bit after this, which is why I keep saying, the emotions and the fact that knowing at least that part happened before this interview, it's like, how can you say that was your last match, you still wrestled after that? But it is what it is. I still respect the guy, and like I said, despite the fact that, again, I don't feel like I can be as excited about Ric Flair as some people who are older school fans than me. Again, this is still a great documentary. This is still a great story about his career and what led to that final 3 days of his career, from the Hall of Fame induction, the match WrestleMania 24, and even the night after Raw, where it turned from Ric Flair saying thank you to us saying thank you to him. So I think it was very well done. And again, it's the first time I've ever seen it too, so I liked it. So that's number 27. I believe we got 10 more of these left. The next one is the behind the scenes from WrestleMania 36, called WrestleMania, The Show Must Go On. Because this is the WrestleMania where the pandemic was happening. It was a very, very sad time. And unfortunately, it was a WrestleMania that probably won't be remembered too well, but I still think that if it was in front of a crowd, this would have been a good WrestleMania. But we'll talk about that in the next video. The next two are actually the only two based around WrestleMania 36. That one, and there is one following that on Drew McIntyre, the chosen one. So, yep, got a couple good ones coming up. Again, we only have about 10 left, and I'll see you guys next time. So what are your guys' thoughts on this Ric Flair, the Final Farewell 24 review? Leave your guys' thoughts again down in the comments section below. Be sure as always to slap a like on the video, subscribe for more content on my channel. Follow me on Twitter as well at the Club of the Man 93. You must follow me on TikTok and Instagram at the Club of the Man 1993. And actually, if you watch this whole this whole video at least, or actually if you watch this whole video, give me a woo. And if you've watched this entire series so far, go woo! Basically, a longer woo, if you know what I mean. But, yep. I'll see you guys next time for the WrestleMania, The Show Must Go On review for the next in this 24 review series. Have a good night, guys, and I'll catch y'all later. But do not forget also, in order to be superior to the man, you've got to be the man. And for I am the man himself. And that is not just an opinion, my friends. That is a fact of life. Yeah! Woo!